But Lord Hastings is the head of CSR for the BBC, and he is the chair of the Crime Concern, non-party political peer, head of in the House of Lords, and the non-executive director of BT, or in other words, British Telecom. So he told me also he's an avid cricket fan. No, I just made that up. So, without further ado, Lord Hastings.
Thank you very much, Ken, and good morning to you all. I'm just going to read you the text of something I wrote for a business magazine to maybe set the scene for how we're going to think about these things over the next few days. Watch any week's news and you stay stunned. Leaders are less today about direction and authority and more about distraction and autonomy. As I was thinking about this, France was embroiled in urban riots and ethnic clashes. The UN was under scrutiny for its oil for food program, and the war on terrorism was more acute than ever. Globalization is a great servant of the people. That is globalization which is delivering services, products, wealth, employment and freedoms through technology and the spread of information and the right to free communications and learning and insight and a deepening sense of duty and community. If business can look back across a generation of global expansion, popular worldwide brands and reliable products and services that match ambition, then all of us have won. But globalization which extends the slave trade in people's labor, globalization that shatters opportunities by short-term production, putting in place of long-term investment, globalization which grabs the world's resources without sustainable returns, and any vision of our obligations in the next generation is but a crippling virus, spreading fear and ripping apart communities of vulnerable yet ambitious people who have every right to wealth, extension and freedom to nurture their young. There are just some of the complex questions that both business and politics must address. And they must ask of the corporate juggernaut that strides the world stage, devouring and yet promising, creating yet engulfing, giving and yet taking away. Companies that have started the serious journey of responsible leadership and know the rewards that are compelling. Some of it was, of course, not like this at the beginning. Some companies, the big oil industries, mining and energy providers, for example, were in effect embarrassed into compliance. Public scandals and careless executives were ripe with indifference, ready pickings with the aggressive and well-honed lobbying power of non-governmental advocates, able to take sides for the people against the powerful, with an obliging and cynical media all too keen to create the space for corporate havoc. But that was then, the 1970s and 80s, but not now. Well, not now for most. In the 90s, a decade that's been laden with corporate pains of technology transfer worldwide became also the decade of even bigger corporate scandals, internally determined and utterly avoidable and wholly destructive. Deceitful accounting fiddles that shamed the wealth-laden, but few revealed how ever content leaders may be to shout out their values and to remain hollow as the integrity of the business leaders who dreamt up schemes of self-advance but never asked the question, who is this serving? Out of failure has come revelation. Revelation that corporate life can be both altruistic and advantageous. That resources which are finite are best preserved and deployed, with sustainable investment in mind and international integrity rippling through the boardrooms of today's global giants. Corporate social responsibility became the way out and the way through. Collapsing public confidence in the globalization dream has taught us one most potent lesson. Globalization brings with it the phenomenon of free and accessible information in an empowered age. Reputation is everything. And with the flight to protect and enhance reputation comes the steady delivery of a serious commitment to conduct business in response to that most awkward of questions, who is this serving? Long before corporate social responsibility was the buzzword of American and European boardrooms, and the tea-time chatter of weary politicians eager to repair the damage created by collapsing public confidence fed by a campaigning media, one great US President, Robert Kennedy, stated the answer to the lingering question, who is this serving, with this observation: let no one be discouraged by the belief that there's nothing one man, one woman cannot do against the enormous army of the world's ills, against misery and ignorance, against injustice and violence. Few will have the greatness to bend history itself, but each of us can work to change a small portion of the events, and in total, all of these acts will be written within the history of a generation. So what has happened to leadership in 2005? Some leaders have learned to serve as well as to strive. Some have learned that truth is a safer safeguard than deceit, and that in giving, great returns are rewarded. Some have learned to buy and to sell with a conscience, to search for better ways to protect the poor and the environment that kicks back at the rich as well as the poor. Some have learned that people are an asset, a real investment, a great resource, and ultimately the only safe route to sustainable profitability. Some have learned. Now Australia's business tigers need to learn too, because failure to learn will lead to extinction. Thank you.